Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Lost His Mind and Destroyed All Mythology's movie. Before we start, please go support MeliodasElReyDemonio for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Pain, sadness, disappointment, and a strong sense of revenge would grip that young man who promised to be the greatest hero of all time, but who would lose himself on the path of darkness, putting all the races of the world in danger of extinction. Chapter 1 Wound. Before the Red Dragon was reborn at the hands of a human, the Great Oracle would have a dream, a premonition of a great tragedy in the distant future. That dream would be passed on by word of mouth throughout the races, including the Olympians, Asgardians, demons, angels, yokai, and so on. The Oracle's words would be interpretive for each person who heard them. These would be the words of the premonitors. Under the light of the full moon, a man will be struck to the soul by that brightly colored figure, a woman. The rain from the dark sky would begin the hunt for all magical beings. Those words would put all the magical beings on the planet on alert, and they would begin to reinforce their armies, leading the demons to do the same. Finally, someone would arrive who would provide them with powerful insurance against that enemy. His name was Issei, the bearer of the Red Dragon. That young man promised to be the hero who would overthrow the prophesied king and save all the races, unaware that they were slowly approaching that dark night. The young human would be part of Rias Gregory's team, a powerful demon who was a great leader and, above all, the great love of her new half-demon, half-dragon warrior. Time would pass and the name of Issei would become famous throughout the magical world, meeting great figures such as Odin, the great demon kings, the archangel Michael, etc., until finally the day of the date would arrive, or rather, the dark night. That night, in hell itself, a small war was taking place between the demons and the descendants of the ancient demons, who would be defeated by a furious Issei until Vale, Issei's great rival, would arrive in hell with Asia, who was the cause of the brown-haired boy's fury. Meanwhile, Rias, who already had an eye on Vale, would be more direct this time with her companions. The young redhead had grown tired of having a subject like Issei who was a pervert, a lazy person, and someone very mentally ill since he easily lost control, which on many occasions led him to endanger his companions, like on this occasion, for which Rias would do the dirty work which she had already planned with Akeno and the others. Meanwhile, Issei, who was still in an uncontrolled rage, would observe his great love insinuating himself to his greatest rival, who would respond to these insinuations in the same way since he wanted to do as much damage as possible to Issei, and would take advantage of the fact that his beloved was trying something with him which would further enrage the dragon. "Tsh is so annoying," Rias would whisper upon hearing her servant in the distance. Those who claimed to be his companion would do nothing to try to calm him down until a huge portal would open, from which the Great Red, the most powerful dragon in existence, would emerge. The appearance of that being until Issei and his companion lost their energy, causing him to lose his transformation, returning to his human form, on his knees with a downcast look. "So all this time I wasn't wrong, I was right in thinking that I felt you were getting further and further away," Rias the young man would whisper, feeling how his mistress approached him slowly, staying in the air with her demon wings. "You were a good pawn, Issei, but nothing more than that. A pawn speaking with a cold voice, and since you understand the situation, I will explain my plan in more detail." Looking at Vala, who kept his gaze on the Great Red, "I created this whole plan a long time ago. The only reason why I joined you to my entourage is that I knew that you would be the perfect tool to attract." Vala turning to look at him again. "You know, a long time ago a prophecy spread throughout the magical world which said something about a being that would wipe out all races or something like that, and although it always seemed stupid to me, I decided to take precautions. And what better than to have both celestial dragons under my power?" Changing his serious face to a big malicious smile. "That was my great dream since always. And I believed I had achieved the first step by having you, but I soon realized that you were not worthy, so I decided to use you and better have the target in my power, who, in addition to being descendants of one of the most powerful kings, used the sacred gear to perfection." I would comment with a tone of irony. "I see, I really always knew something like this could happen. Why would someone like me be of interest to someone like you?" I would whisper with a voice without feelings. "But I still thank you for all this time and the times you were useful to me. You were a great tool." Getting even closer and placing the palm of his hand a few centimeters from the chestnut's head. "Now you took off your pawn pieces, therefore he will die, and consequently I will have to keep your sacred gear," he would explain coldly. The young man would not even react to these words since his heart had been damaged and his soul wounded. Meanwhile, To everyone's surprise, a great rain would begin to fall in hell itself, which was impossible to happen, but there it was, before everyone's eyes. Goodbye, Issei, using his power and ending the life of his pawn while the sacred gear appeared physically and kept it in a magic bubble. The young demon would sigh and return to her companions, who had seen everything but disagreed with that decision, although some were hurt but would try to hide it. On the other hand, Vala would observe the murder of his rival and smile to himself since his plan was coming together perfectly. Now he simply had to let himself be used by Rias and the others as they had planned, unaware that they were actually being manipulated. Some time later, Rias's entourage would return to the castle and the news of the death of the hero, Issei HERIDO, would begin to spread, which would alert the magical world. But Rias would propose Vala as the new hero, and although many would find it hard to trust that former member of the Cow's Brigade, they would understand that it was better since he knew how to use his power perfectly. Vala and the brigade's plan would slowly begin to bear fruit. Meanwhile, the young man, murdered and betrayed by his mistress, found himself in a dark, limbo-like space. Where am I floating in that place? You who have been discarded by those you once loved, have the opportunity to take revenge on all those who used you for their benefit, those who used a false smile to then turn their backs on you. You can end them all using my power, a dark voice would speak in that abyss. Who are you? Turning his head without being able to see anything. Do not fear, Issei HERIDO. My name is Mork, an ancient and forgotten god. I, like the other gods, represent something. But you will understand if you accept me, that being would speak, appearing in front of the young man, who would be scared by his appearance. What do you mean? Scared and confused. Use me, Issei HERIDO. Use my power and destroy all the magical beings on planet Earth, increasing the volume of his voice. What? Why would I do that? Even more confused. Don't you remember? They betrayed you, used you, and discarded you as if you were nothing. Don't you feel your soul asking for revenge? The god would ask. I thoughtfully, I don't want that. Really, the only one who left me was Rias, but I don't feel anything. Deep down I love her. It was something I expected, changing his tone of voice to a more melancholic one. You don't understand. She and everyone used you, your effort, your energies, your feelings, your body. Everything was used and you never received anything in return. You must give back all the pain you received, he would explain, erasing a change in the young man's soul. Well, I never really wanted to be a demon. One day I just woke up and I was his pawn, comments out loud. If you accept my power, you will become human again. And you will be able to make your dream come true, I would tell him. I mean your true dream, that of elevating humanity to become the dominant species in the world. With me on your side, you will be able to teach humans magic and thus prevent demons and fallen angels from taking advantage of yours as you always wanted, the unknown god would explain. The young brown-haired man would close his eyes for a few seconds while he thought about the consequences and side effects of accepting this god. But he knew that if he wanted to fulfill his dreams, he had to give everything he had, even his own life, for which he would have an answer that would satisfy the god. I accept, I would simply answer with a serious face. At that moment, the immense god would begin to enter the young man while saying a few last words to him. I will be unconscious for a long time. From now on you must train and slowly awaken my powers. From now on you are alone, finishing disappearing. Meanwhile, in hell, in the place where the young man had died, an immense and uncontrollable aura would appear, only foreshadowed by the gods of the great mythologies. From that immense aura, a completely new being would emerge, beginning with the prophecy. Chapter 2, Declaration. Once again Issei would open his eyes, and the first thing he would notice was how his body and soul were human again. Not a trace of demonic blood remained in him. The young man's presence would be heard by all the mythological gods, who would immediately notice the strange essence in his body. Without knowing who it was, they would quickly contact Hell to find out who it was, for which some demon guards would be sent without any results, since Issei would quickly leave. What does that mean, brother? Rias would ask, agitated. That's right. The presence that Odin-sama, Zeus-sama, and other gods felt came from where Issei died, but they couldn't find his corpse there, he would answer in a serious tone. Maybe someone took him. Those bastards will want to experiment with Issei's body, worried that the truth would be known. Maybe, but that doesn't explain why we couldn't feel that kind of aura. Maybe it's the power of some god, he would comment thoughtfully while walking around the room. We must do something. We will not let Issei's body be used as an experiment, the redhead would plead. Meanwhile, in the realm of the gods Asgard, a great Valkyrie would enter the great meeting hall where the god Odin was with his advisors in a meeting. My lord, bowing. Give me news, Gunnar. Odin would speak. According to the demons, the corpse of the previous bearer of the red dragon was not found at the site. He would explain. I imagined it sighing, well, gentlemen, it seems the time has finally come, he would comment to his advisors. The great prophecy has begun. Ragnarok is approaching, he would say. Thus the news spread throughout the magical world, which did not please the demonic world, since this would lead to Rias, the demon king's sister, being the great traitor mentioned in the prophecy, and the one to blame for all races being massacred by a new enemy. On the other hand, all the species of the magical world would begin to prepare more than ever with large armies trained for that specific moment. Others would make alliances between races. The weakest ones, like the yokai, would simply stay on the sidelines since they were not characterized by war. Time would pass, allowing the races to arm themselves as fully as possible, prepared for any surprise attack, unaware that humanity was having a dream, or rather, a premonition in which they saw the Savior appear, the one who would guide humanity to defeat all its nightmares, the one who would free them from fear and lead them to an age of light and greatness. Everyone would have the same dream, not at the same time or in the same way, but many said they saw a man appear and save them from a great demon, and then guide them toward their dreams. That rumor would reach the ears of the great leaders of the factions, who were increasingly concerned that this savior of humanity was their great enemy. So they would decide to call a meeting between the highest of each race and find out what would happen. Many things would be said about that meeting. Some rumored that they would sign a great alliance of the magical world. Others would say that they could discuss whether to exterminate the human race, and a few others would have the feeling that something would happen. Something like finally no leader would agree with anyone and another war would take place. Or worse yet, that someone would take advantage to attack them. Finally, and after much delay, the grand gathering would take place after months of preparation. The gathering would take place in none other than heaven, the purest place on planet Earth, a place where evil cannot exist, and where the most filthy thoughts would disappear. One by one, the gods and kings would arrive, along with their great guardians, the most powerful warriors of their realms. There were gods such as Issei, the god of Greek mythology, Zeus, Odin of Asgard, Michael the host, Xerxes the demon king, Azazel, leader of the fallen angels, and some leaders of smaller, weaker races. Finally, with everyone already in their seats, the discussion would take place. Whether everyone agrees or not, I will be the first to start. We will end humanity, yes or no? Asked the god Zeus with a very serious tone. That is something that was never up for discussion. Something like the extermination of a species can never be taken into consideration, Michael would respond. This time it's different. Michael Odin would interrupt with his immense wisdom. We are talking about the human species, who lately are having dreams, with a savior, who will guide them to the highest, and to get to the highest they must leave us behind, which means they must get rid of us, the old man would comment. And what if you are the wrong one, Odin? Xerxes would speak with a challenging tone. What if making the magical world believe that my sister is a traitor is a mistake by the wisest man in the magical world? The great demon would ask. Maybe he would answer, but it is no coincidence that humanity is having that dream after a presence so strange that only the gods could feel it appeared, he would explain calmly. It is possible that humanity is simply being used by someone else. Perhaps someone implanted those dreams in each human to set a trap for us, Azazel would comment with his characteristic calm personality. Who would be capable of such a thing? Very few have the power to do something like that to an entire species. Michael would ask. Whatever it is, someone is lurking in our worlds and we don't know who it is. Someone who is capable of turning the magical kingdom upside down, Azazel would comment. Meanwhile, the god Ra would simply stand aside, listening and analyzing every word of his peers. But just as Xerxes was about to make another comment, someone would interrupt him. A voice well known to many there, but with a totally different personality, would enter through the great door with a kick, destroying it and putting everyone inside on guard. Well, all the leaders are here, but don't they need one? Like for example the representative of humanity? Issei would speak. Everyone would immediately notice how different this Issei was, much more self-confident, with a defiant and even somewhat arrogant tone. The young man would walk through the room while everyone's eyes fell on him as he walked towards Michael's throne. Michael would exude an aggressive aura at such disrespect, and although he had known him before, he would not forgive him for such an act. Have you forgotten that the human race also exists? Ignorant, stupid idiots, he would tell them with a smile on his face. Issei, Xerxes would raise his voice, still surprised that he was alive. Oh, Xerxes-sama, it's been a while. How is your dear sister? With a sarcastic tone. Who is this brat? Zeus would ask, starting to shoot small rays from his body due to the boy's insult. He is the previous hero of hell, the one who promised to be the savior, but from what I can see, he ended up being the same one from the prophecy, Odin would answer, watching him out of the corner of his eye. How are you, Issei? I thought you were dead. Why don't you join us? Azazel interrupted with his smile. It would be an honor, but it seems not many here would feel the same. He would respond in a mocking tone. That seat doesn't belong to you. Get down from there right now, or Michael would warn, being interrupted. Or what? Will you kill me just like the traitorous sister of the Demon King did? He would ask, moving his head back seriously. What are you saying, Issei? Why do you say that about Rias? Xerxes reproached, confused. Didn't she tell you? You're so stupid. Even though you're the king, he would answer, she was the one who got rid of me. She ended my life. But don't worry. I don't have any hard feelings, he would explain, but don't get me wrong. I haven't forgotten her betrayal, which is why you have two options, leader, simply capturing everyone's interest. The first option is simple. Take all your demons, fallen angels, Asgardians, Olympians and others from the human world, no longer interfere with humanity, much less interact with any of them, seeming like an impossible idea for all of them since the human world was the bridge to connect all races, or I will take the difficult, arduous and bloody job of wiping out all of you and your species. It's your decision, he would finish explaining. A few seconds of silence would invade the room until finally Ra, the Egyptian god, would speak as he stood up, just like the other kings who noticed that the only one who still remained seated was that god until he would stand up. That idea is simply impossible. If you want a war, you will have it, with an implacable tone of voice. No one else there would speak, but everyone disagreed with what had been said that day, since leaving the human world would mean not having any kind of connection with the other species, which would slowly lead them to chaos by not being able to trade for mutual interests, and not making alliances. Oh, until the god of birds deigns to speak in a mocking tone. By the way, I forgot a detail. I also want the head of Rias and her entourage, but from what I see it will not be possible. Turning to see Xerxes' face upon hearing those words, and would effectively react as he thought. The great demon king would be enraged by those words and would quickly attack Issei with a powerful ball of energy, causing a huge explosion. After the dust disappeared, Issei would not be seen anywhere, nor his presence, so they assumed he had left, although no one knew how he had entered heaven. Finally, the meeting would end a few minutes later, as everyone would come to the same conclusion. An alliance is the only thing that will prevent the extinction of the magical world. Chapter 3: Alliance. After declaring war on the great kings and gods of the magical world, young Issei would return to his home, which was an artificial island very far from any other human civilization, in which magical beings could not enter due to a barrier created by him. Upon arriving on a small boat, the first thing I would see was a young girl leaning against one of the large trees, looking at the chestnut tree with a small smile. It seems you've done some bad things, boss, the young woman would speak with a soft voice. It's something that had to happen at some point, Elaine, walking without giving it much importance, changing the subject. How many times have I told you to put on clothes? Walking past. As he continued walking towards his base, he would meet another subject who was simply watching the water flow through the large river that was there. You must be very sure of yourself to do something like that, the young man would comment, turning around. That's what I think. Get ready because we'll be leaving soon, Dan, Issei would answer calmly. Not so far from the river they would begin to hear some kind of very sharp weapons cutting trees, and the further they advanced along the path towards the base, the blades seemed faster until they would reach a small battlefield in which there was a tall woman cutting trees with two swords in both hands as if they were simple paper, until she would feel the presence of Issei. Oh boss, he's finally back, putting away his weapons. The rumor of what he's done has spread. I'll be ready at any moment, he would speak to him in a serious tone. That damn girl was watching me, tsh, somewhat angry. Fine. I'm counting on you, Sasha, following his path. Yes, the swordswoman would answer. After a few minutes, he finally reached his base, which was more of a utopia than simply perfect. That place wasn't a base for hiding or plotting. It was more like a vast academy where hundreds of young children studied and trained to one day become the defenders of humanity. The moment he was seen by some children, everyone would be happy to see him, and would greet him from all over, to which Issei would happily respond to all those boys and girls. After that, he would enter the academy and walk down one of the beautiful hallways, which were decorated with plants and large columns. At one of the windows facing outside, he would encounter a man with a peculiar appearance. The young man was blindfolded, had many wounds on his body, was thin, and had a small smile while smoking a cigarette. You stupid idiot, why have you been watching me? Issei would ask somewhat angrily. You know this place is boring to me and I have nothing else to do but watch your fun and intrepid life, I would respond in a sarcastic way. Sighing, I don't want to have this discussion now, Aaron. Tell me, where is Eri? Right now they are in the backyard library, boss blowing and throwing the cigar smoke out the window. Young Issei would simply leave him behind and head off in search of Eri. Upon arriving, he would observe the young woman on the second floor as she searched for some books. Hey Eri, raising his voice a little. Huh? Turning around, oh Issei, I mean boss, what's wrong? The young woman would ask. You could immediately see how Eri was different from the rest. She was not fully human. She had 80% of her body roboticized, so she constantly read books in search of a way to improve her system. Tell me Eri, how are you feeling? Going up the stairs. You shouldn't worry about me, boss. I feel better than ever. Smiling, I would answer him. I can see your true feelings in your eyes, Eri. Approaching her, I've already told you. You shouldn't hold back with me, with a soft voice. At that moment Eri would throw herself at him and rest her head on Issei's chest while he stroked her head with a smile. After a few moments, both would find themselves in the seats on the first floor, while Eri carried some books with her. Tell me Eri, have you already found a way to improve yourself? He would ask, interested. Oh no, not yet. But there are many books by ancient scientists talking about robotics, so I will read them and try to do it. She would answer happily. Tell me boss, changing her face to a slightly more serious one, is it true that you declared war on the magical world? She would ask, somewhat worried. I had no choice. I offered them to leave our world but they refused. They are stubborn and will not allow a human to give them orders, sighing. So we will prepare to give everything we have. We have trained for a long time to achieve this. We will not let them end our dreams. Determined and determined. I trust you. You will be the ones who will take humanity to the top. I am just a piece of this huge puzzle, I would tell him with a small smile. At that moment, both would be interrupted as the previously seen Elaine, Dan, Curl, and Aaron entered through the main door. All ready for the journey they would take with their leader. Okay friends, it's time to show those idiots that humans are not something to be played with. Standing up while the others listened proudly to their boss. We are the human species, and we are not below any other. Clenching his fist. Minutes later, we see the six on a large ship similar to that of the Vikings, but much larger. This group of humans were about to set sail, while being seen off by hundreds of students, who would be cared for by teachers who were said to be the most distinguished humans in the world, such as Albert Einstein, Aristotle, Julius Caesar, Isaac Newton, Alexander the Great, etc. All of them already immersed in the world of magic taught by Issei. All those young people of all ages will bid farewell to the strongest, most prodigious, and most special people on the island, whom they would not see for a long time because they were on a mission. On the other hand, far, far away from there, more specifically on Mount Olympus, home of gods like Zeus, Hades and Poseidon, the great oracle would have another vision which would quickly spread throughout the magical world due to the complexity of the riddle. Very soon the world will be enveloped by a great winter that will strike all worlds, and horrendous creatures will dive to battle against those unworthy. Many would say that the great winter was not so literal and that it rather referred to the chaos that the world will be subjected to, and that the creatures will be those who defied the kings and gods. Others would say that that prophecy would take place many years later, as was the case with the previous prophecy, and a few others believed in those words literally as a great winter. As if the world was going to freeze and monsters were going to emerge. Whatever the case, it was not something to be taken lightly, which is why many would prepare without lowering their guard for the danger posed by Issei, not knowing that he had with him very powerful allies with powers so strange and different from the rest. Chapter 4: Skills and Monsters. Finally, Team Issei embarked on a massive ship built by the island's finest architects in search of something that would determine their future success. The ship would sail for days in only one direction, as the place they were headed was at the end of the world. In that mysterious place, where there was only ice and where humans were strictly forbidden to visit, lest they be attacked by ferocious beasts. After a long journey they would finally reach their destination and would head to an exact spot which had been found a long time ago by some humans who claimed to have seen 9 worlds, and would write myths and legends of that place that would never again be found by non-magical beings. Wow, this place gives me the creeps, Eri would comment, looking around. That place was a large cave with an enormous statue in its center, surrounded by 9 portals depicting 9 worlds. These worlds belong to none other than the kingdom of the Norse gods. Answer me something, Elaine. Do you know which of these worlds belongs to Asgard? Dan would say, walking next to the youngest of the group. Yes, it's that one, he points out with a cold and emotionless voice. The young woman points to one of the portals where a huge city could be seen, through which Issei would jump without hesitation, followed by Curl and then the others. Meanwhile, in the Titanic castle where the father of the gods and the wisest man in the magical world resided, Odin, he was with some Valkyries to whom he was entrusting some missions until at one point he would feel the presence of these strangers arriving in his world. Guards, raising his voice quick, prepare all the soldiers and patrol the city in search of unknown persons. Any act of rebellion must be ended without mercy, the old man would order. The Imperial Guard would quickly go on alert and go out in search of any suspect who did not appear to be an Asgardian, not knowing that they were making a mistake since Issei would have used magic to modify their appearances and then seal them so that no one would detect them. Although even so, those seconds it took to change the team's appearance would be enough for someone as cunning as Odin to notice. Was it necessary for you to choose that appearance? Eri would ask in a mocking tone. What's wrong? It's a normal appearance, Issei would answer. I think he looks handsome, Curl would intervene with a smile. The 6 members of Team Issei walked calmly through the city since their new appearances were similar to that of any common Asgardian, and since none of them possessed magic, it allowed them to go undetected while heading to the great castle. It's here, Issei would say, brushing his hand against the great wall. It's all yours, Curl, stepping back. There the great swordswoman unsheathes her swords, and with a soft cut she would create a square in the wall which was made of a non-human material, but it would matter little to her great strength and her sharp swords. I wonder what kind of stone this is. It doesn't seem to be found on the ground, Eri would comment as everyone passed through the hole. Upon entering the wall, they would see a large spiral staircase, which was exactly where Curl had cut. Without further ado, they would begin their descent. After a long walk, they would reach the bottom of the stairs, but around a corner, they would notice some guards guarding a huge door made of special steel. I'll take care of it, Dan would say. Try to be as quiet as possible. We don't want anyone else to know we're here, Issei would order in a whisper. Of course, that's why I'm a ninja. I dedicate myself to being silent, with a slight smile of confidence. From one of his pockets, Dan would take out 2 smoke bombs which he would throw at both guards who would be blinded, allowing the ninja to infiltrate and knock them out with a simple blow to a vital point. You can come in now, he would speak to his companions. Finally, they were in front of their objective. What lay on the other side of that door was the place where their victory or failure lay. It would be difficult for any other being to open those heavy doors, but Issei would open them with a single kick, knocking them down, and observing what was inside, which would leave everyone surprised. That place was a super prison where the worst beings of the 9 kingdoms of the Norse world were housed. We will separate. Each one takes a different path. Whoever finds it should warn the rest, Issei would order, walking. Thus, the 6 members took different paths. The further they traveled through the place, the more tension and the smell of bloodlust increased, as it became darker and darker as they moved away from the entrance and exit gates. Meanwhile, Elaine walked calmly, listening to many prisoners yelling all kinds of horrible things at her, unaware that she was a simple teenage girl who should be in the academy, but due to her unique potential, she would be promoted to belong to Issei's group. Young Elaine would go deeper and deeper into the prison until she reached a point where the prisoners were no longer the same because they were more fearful. They did not let themselves be seen and hid in the darkness of their cells, and she would soon realize why. On the other hand, there was Eren, who decided to destroy one of the cells to find out more quickly where a person was, without knowing that inside that cell was a powerful creature. I'll ask you some questions, answer or I'll have to ask someone else, observing the subject in the dark. The young man would stop in his tracks upon seeing red eyes in that dark area, which would approach him until it was revealed by the light, and its appearance revealed to be none other than Medusa. Oh, surprised a little, but didn't you belong to the world of the Greeks? He would ask her, somewhat confused. Freeing me was your worst mistake, Snot. I will finish you off, that ferocious monster would respond. We returned to Elaine, who was walking calmly in a very tense silence generated by the prisoners, until at one point her body would react upon hearing a loud howl not far from her position, and upon observing with more determination, she would notice the presence of a gigantic wolf which she would quickly recognize as the one who will finish off Odin by sinking his fangs into him. The powerful wolf Fenrir. The moment he realized it was Fenrir, the great wolf would stare at Elaine, roar, and leap towards where the young woman was. On the other hand, the others would hear Fenrir's howl, but the only one who knew that Elaine was in that direction was Dan, so he would run to her aid. Meanwhile, the giant wolf of about 10 meters was in front of the young woman, who was less than 1.70, both face to face, while Fenrir increased his thirst for blood, and without waiting a second more, he would try to eat her, which he would succeed, but to his bad luck, that Elaine that bit her was nothing more than an illusion created by her, who would appear behind the beast, who would quickly turn around, attacking her with its long and sharp claws, but his attack would pass long since again that Elaine was nothing more than a hologram. This would further annoy Loki's son, who would begin to chase Elaine, but every time he managed to reach her with his mouth, claws or tail, she would disappear as if she were a fake clone, which would drive him crazy until at one point he would hear a sigh from the real Elaine, who was not far from her enemy. The young woman would close her eyes, whisper a few words, and then open them as she slowly approached Fenrir, who would feel the fearsome aura of that teenager who seemed to distort reality. That would intimidate Fenrir so much that he would have no choice but to prostrate himself and lower his head in submission. "I always wanted to have a pet. What do you think if from now on you are mine?" I would ask him, to which Fenrir would simply let out a few moans in an affirmative manner to his question, good boy, caressing his enormous head, dominating him completely. Meanwhile, Dan was on top of a small hill not far away, watching everything in surprise as he saw how that girl dominated one of the fiercest beasts of the 9 Asgardian worlds. "Now I see why Issei integrated you into his team. He saw something very powerful inside you," Elaine with admiration and respect in his words. Meanwhile, we returned to Eren, who would be attacked by Medusa with her long nails that looked more like claws, but the human would dodge all of her attacks with ease and with a smile on his face. "Hey, come on, you don't have to attack me. I just want to ask you some questions," I would say with my hands in my pockets. "I'll finish you off," full of fury. "Oh, so you're not 100% conscious," Eren would say with his right hand on his chin. "Thoughtfully, anger is what predominates in you right now," without removing the smile from his face. At one point, Medusa would attack with her large tail from behind her enemy, but she would feel immense pain as she felt her tail being cut as if a sword had pierced it. "You damn human!" Stepping back but still with great fury, "If you would just take off that damn bandage," constantly trying to use his petrification. If you asked me that way, I can't refuse," I would answer sarcastically. To Medusa's surprise, her enemy would begin to remove his blindfold while looking at her head on, which would have no effect on Eren, which would lead Medusa to realize the reason. The one she was facing was completely blind. His eyes were gray and he could see absolutely nothing, so her power to turn those who saw her into stone was completely useless against the human in front of her. "What do you think?" I would ask in a mocking tone. How is it possible that you can dodge my attacks while being blind?" she would scream furiously. "That is an easy question to answer. It is due to 3 qualities," he would explain, confusing the monster. "The first of them is my great hearing ability," pointing to his ears. "Because all my life I was blind, I dedicated myself to improving my hearing ability so I can hear a spider walk on its web, something that would surprise her. The second is due to awakening 2 abilities when training alongside Issei, my captain, putting the blindfold back on his eyes. The first quality is that I can see everything around me within a radius of 2 meters, like a chameleon. This helps me when entering my rival's personal area and rests my ears. And the second quality is that, when I touch a person, I can perfectly see everything that person observes from their perspective." That last ability would make Medusa completely change her personality, changing from furious to scared. "That means that," with a trembling voice. "That's right. Right now I see the same thing you see, which means I see myself," I would finish speaking. At that moment, everything would happen in slow motion for Medusa, who would immediately try to escape, but Eren would not give her the slightest chance, and with impressive speed he would stick his arm in his enemy's chest, and then quickly go down, cutting her entire abdomen, and then turn and cut her head off. The last thing the monster woman would see would be her enemy's sadistic grin along with the words, "Die, filthy non-human." The monster's body would fall, but Eren would decide to keep the head as a trophy of his triumph, unaware that Medusa's power was still working. On the other hand, we see Issei, who finally finds his target in a prison. Inside, he finds a man sitting while darkness covers half of his body. "I finally find you," damn, raising his head and lowering his cold eyes. Chapter 5. Who is Issei? Finally, after a long journey, Issei would find the person who would help them win this war against the magical world. In that prison within Asgard, home of the gods, was none other than the wisest god, Mimir, who had been a prisoner of Odin for a long time but was now being rescued by a human. That wise man was just as the myths described him, an old man of many years, on the verge of going bald, wearing strange clothes but with a peculiar smile on his face that he showed immediately upon seeing Issei. "I was waiting for you," the old man would comment as he approached the chestnut tree. "Stop there, old man. Don't come any closer if you don't want to die," the young man would warn coldly. "Oh, of course, no fool would dare to disobey the forgotten god," Mimir would emphasize in a somewhat mocking tone. "Tell me one thing, are you willing to obey each and every one of my orders? Or would you prefer that I end your life right now like the rest?" looking him in the eyes with a face that would scare anyone. "Let me think, acting I'm not one to obey orders, but if with that I can save myself from the purge you'll do, then I have no choice," raising his shoulders with an ironic smile. The brown-haired man would stare at her for a few moments until he would turn his back and start walking, while Mimir followed him with a big smile on his face while watching his back. "Whatever you're up to, don't try it. You know who I really am, so I won't have mercy if you challenge me," the young man would warn without turning around. "Oh sure, little god," he would answer, while Issei sighed, knowing the annoying attitude of the wisest god. On the other hand, the other members except Eri would gather, since they had not found the subject, and they hoped that one of the other two who were missing had found him, but they could not relax a second longer, since they would feel how the ground would suddenly begin to shake so hard that the entire earth would break in two, while the weakest prisoners fell into the precipice and others managed to get out of their cells. But what would terrify everyone the most was the monster that would come out from under the earth. That beast that came from the worst place in hell was a calamity approximately 10 meters long, with armor so detailed and dangerous that each of its parts was a different weapon to immediately finish off its victims. That thing was so dangerous that the god Odin had to banish him to the darkest place in the 9 worlds, but he managed to escape thanks to Issei, and his team managed to infiltrate and break one of the chains that bound him. Everything in that thick armor was a weapon. It had 8 arms, which 2 were chainsaws that broke anything, as well as 3 cannons that caused small explosions with the destructive power of a sun. Then it had pincers which, once they took you, were practically impossible to open, as well as a flaming super sword with which he could cut the world serpent as if it were a piece of paper, and in his last arm he had a scythe that he used to open portals to different places. Then, on his legs he had large spikes which injected you with a poison so toxic that it would make Hades suffer from cancer. On his knees he had skulls from which from his mouth came out a smoke so radiant that it melted you instantly, and from his eyes he could expel laser beams. On his chest was a giant mouth with teeth so sharp that Fenrir's teeth, which could kill Odin, resembled those of a newborn. On his back, he also had an attack and counterattack mechanism. He could use it to create an energy field to protect himself, and then enclose his victim in the same field, crushing them to dust. All of these weapons and more would be what Elaine, Dan, Curl, and Eren would have to face if they were to wait for Issei and Elaine to not destroy the main door and be trapped in that dimension forever. "TSH, I'm not made to fight with these things," Eren would comment while smoking. "It is our mission to protect the door. If we do not succeed, then we will not be able to finish off all the gods out there," Curl would speak determinedly while she unsheathed her swords. "I think I have an idea how to stop this monster," Dan would comment, wielding 2 kunais from his waist. "TSH, how silly," Elaine would whisper in a cold and bored voice. "The first to attack would be the beast, who with a rigid stretch one of its arms saw against our protagonists, who would quickly jump away, except Curl, who would withstand the power of the monster with one of her swords, which would collide and make sparks. Quickly Dan would attack with several kunais to the face of the beast, but his other arms would easily destroy them. At that moment Eren would fall at an incredible speed on its back and would begin to hit the powerful armor with his fists and legs, but the monster's pincers would grab him by the arm and send him flying, followed by a super explosion from the cannon. At that moment Curl would turn and achieve the arm saw along with his armor with some effort, but from the skull on the knee of the armor would launch a powerful laser beam which the swordswoman would manage to cut in two and save herself. Without waiting a second more, Curl would jump towards the face of her enemy and try to cut it with both swords, but would be blocked with the second saw. Meanwhile Dan would take advantage of his great agility as a ninja to use his great weapon, Kusarigama, which he would throw directly at one of his arms, and thus hang to get closer, and when he was in the air a few meters from his head he would throw 2 explosive bombs, which also had smoke to block his vision for a few moments. That moment would be taken advantage of by Eren, who had been somewhat hurt by the explosion he received, but would appear again to cut off with the palm of his hand the arm which had the same pincers with which he was sent flying, which measured approximately 5 meters and had to be held with great precision. Meanwhile, Curl would fall to the ground and take advantage of the opportunity to speed toward its enormous legs and cut them off. But the skull's mouth would begin to release a large toxic gas while the energy field that would protect it would appear. All of this would happen in less than 5 seconds from when the monster was cut down, so now they had to wait for it to make the shield that protected it disappear. A few seconds later the smoke bomb would disappear along with the energy field, but what no one expected was that behind the smoke screen the beast was waiting for them, pointing in all directions with its 3 cannons, and would instantly begin to fire enormous explosions that would make the entire prison tremble, alerting the guards of the city of Asgard and Odin himself. "What's happening?" Issei would ask himself upon feeling that power. Oh, maybe Mimir would comment with interest. Who do you think it could be? The brown-haired man would ask. If I'm right, your friends are in great danger, the old man would warn. Well, you see, he would explain. Meanwhile, Eri, who was walking back calmly, would feel that immense power and without thinking twice would increase her speed when she felt that her friends were in trouble. There is a legend, Mimir would say. It is said that thousands of years ago, when the 9 kingdoms were still empty worlds, there was a creature that reigned over everything. No one knows who it is, where it comes from, or who created it. But this creature was only an evil that had been created by an unknown god. Meanwhile, Dan, Curl and Aaron dodged the super explosions that disintegrated everything they touched within a very long radius, making it very difficult for them to escape. But without any of the aforementioned 3 knowing, Elena would appear under the beast who, without hesitation, would turn one of its cannons towards the young woman. After many years of terror and preventing many races from evolving, Odin's father himself rebelled against that beast, and after a fierce battle that would destroy one of the worlds and shake the Yggdrasil tree, the beast was banished to the darkest place in the 9 realms, and the man who defeated him would disappear, leaving everything to his son. The giant monster would fire its cannon at the young woman, but when it hit it, her figure would disappear like smoke and she would appear at the top of the cannon. So the beast would attack Eri with its saw at her back, who would dodge it with a somersault and fall back to the ground while her enemy was somewhat surprised. I can feel something different in her. Who the hell are you? A deep and very loud voice would be heard. My name is Eri and I'm not a demon, just a human, the young warrior would answer. Upon hearing that answer, the titular would show an expression of surprise to the point of taking a step back. Can you hear me and understand me? The beast would ask mentally. Postponed. After all, I possess the ability to hear all things, with a calm expression. But how can you? No one can understand my language, the first language of the 10 kingdoms, enraged. Minus 10 kingdoms? I thought there were only 9 worlds. Somewhat surprised. You observing her determinedly, I propose you a deal. Calling the young woman's attention. I see that you don't know anything about the 10th world, right? Then what do you think if I explain to you everything about that hidden world and its god, that nobody knows? Surprising Eri a little, since she had never heard of another world and a new god. At that moment Issei would feel that something was about to happen that shouldn't happen, some kind of information that no one should know, and without thinking twice he would go to the place where his senses indicated him. And in exchange for giving you that explanation, you will tell me how you are able to listen to me, and then I will leave, leaving your friends alive, I would propose. And why should I do that? With a more serious face. Because the information I can give you is something very important. I don't doubt that even the current gods possess it. Besides, it's too early to kill the only being who can hear and understand me. Maybe in the future we will meet again and our situations will change, the beast would answer. Young Eri would think about it for a few moments but would finally accept, since she was very curious about that information that no one else had since it was so old. You see, it has recently been discovered that humanity can awaken a skill after arduous training, and this skill can help you in many things. For example, it can help a scientist's brain absorb 100 times more information than another average human, just as a martial artist can increase their physical abilities and be 10 times stronger than a normal human. But that's not all. Taking a breath more recently, only my boss named Issei and I have discovered that a second, much more powerful ability can be awakened. For example, I awakened my ability to hear all things, which is why he decided to add me to his elite team. That doesn't explain how you dodged my first explosive attack as if you disappeared into smoke, the monster would interrupt. It's thanks to my first skill. I would say I always wanted to be an illusionist. That's why my first skill awakened and gave me the ability to create different types of illusions, but I still need a lot of practice. For now I can only create illusions of myself and confuse my enemies. Observing his hands with some disappointment. I see how interesting this new species is, the beast would say to itself. Very well, girl, then it's my turn. Proceeding to give her a great amount of information about what happened thousands of years ago, where only a few gods existed. Now you know everything, young lady. Now it's your decision what you will do. See you never opening a black hole below him and beginning to disappear. At that moment, Issei would be seen from afar arriving where the monster was, and upon seeing it for the first time, he would feel his heart beat faster than normal, and a smile appear on his face. Immediately, Issei would create a dark ball in his hand and throw it at the beast, who would then disappear into the black hole. Chapter 6. Around the World. After the assault on the Asgard prison, everyone would gather at the same point, but before saying a word, they would see how hundreds of guards began to enter and surround them while Odin himself appeared before them. Well, You are very daring, Issei the god would speak, and I see that you are in bad company looking at Mimir in a bad way. I see you're still the same impertinent Odin as always, Mimir would respond, smiling despite being a wise man. You allow some young people to infiltrate your kingdom in a mocking tone. The next thing you'll lose will be that big mouth you have, Mimir, Odin would threaten, coming back to you. Watching Issei, what have you become? Issei walking around the group, a villain, a criminal, a leader who is at war against the entire magical world, he would speak. This is nothing more than a decision of you gods, he answers. You are the ones who chose war. You are the ones who created me, and you are the ones who caused your own death, defiant in his words. So you really think you can fight in this war against the entire army of the magical world? With superiority in his words, I remind you that the magical world is not only the three factions, you also wage war on the gods of Olympus, the Egyptian gods, Jokais, Asgard, and many other species, and you, from what I know, you do not have a large army. Looking him in the eyes, smiling, don't be so self-centered, old god, creating an intense aura around both of them. While you in the magical world were at war for thousands of years, humanity endured and continued to grow in number by not having magical power, he would explain. I remind you that the three factions need to transform humans for their armies by not having enough numbers, but for us it is the opposite, he would answer. And what good is winning in numbers if they don't possess any kind of magic? Will they defeat us with their weapons? Their cannons and explosives? The god would ask defiantly. Maybe, but don't underestimate us. They don't know the true potential of the human race and its infinite capacity to adapt, raising his dark aura that would surprise even his own companions. Don't think you'll win this war, Issei. Losing his sanity will finish you and as many humans as necessary. Finish him off, he would order his guards. At that moment, Issei would create a portal beneath him and his companions, which would teleport them back to the same place they came from. There, they would enter the portal, which would return them to the human world in that cave with the large statue. Upon returning, everyone would feel more relieved since some were exhausted and others were not in the best condition to fight, so Issei's action was correct. Fiub, thank goodness we got out of there. We would have been in serious trouble if we had to face them all, Eri would comment. That news would be known throughout the magical world, who would complain to Odin about how he could have let that group of inexperienced young people infiltrate their territory and take with them the wisest man in the entire magical world. Meanwhile, Issei and the rest would return to their island, which was being well cared for by the most outstanding humans of all time, who were also the teachers who taught the young humans who would be part of the great army that Issei was forming. There Issei and Eri separated from the group while Mimir was accompanied by Eren to where his new home would be and then have a meeting. Tell me, Issei, how do you feel? Eri would ask him as they walked side by side in a beautiful forest while the leaves of the trees fell. How to say it, sighing. In the way you feel most comfortable. You know that you shouldn't hold anything back with me because I will always be by your side, I would emphasize, smiling. That smile was all Issei needed for the darkness that haunted him to be illuminated again with the brightest light, and that kindness that flooded his heart, along with a strong feeling that set his heart on fire every time he was by her side. All this is being very hard. I really don't want this war. I don't want humans to die, but I have no other alternative. All those kids I see now, I can't help but think that in the future they will die at the hands of demons, angels, or gods because of me. Stopping his walk and looking down with dejected eye. Issei approaching and stretching his hand to Issei's face. You shouldn't carry all that pain alone. I will always be by your side. Please, let me carry that pain and relieve you a little of all your suffering. I will always support you in any decision, whether right or wrong. You can always count on me because you saved me. If you hadn't been there that day, I wouldn't be alive. You are everything to me, so please let me help you carry all that weight. With a soft and sweet voice he would caress her face while smiling. Eri watching her. Both would look at each other for a few seconds while their lips slowly approached, but they would quickly realize what was happening and everything would end in a beautiful hug, since although their feelings were mutual, that love would never be able to be given. The next day Eri would wake up and the first thing she would do is go to the library with a melancholic face, remembering what happened the day before with Issei, and then remembering her past. The young half-machine would try to delve deeper into his memories, but all he would see were images of a huge garbage dumpster, an adult man, a boy his age, and a huge demon shaking hands with some men in suits. Before he knew it, he was in the library reading a book about robotics. But as he walked toward a bench to read his book, he bumped into Joseph Engelberger himself. "Oh, young lady, what a coincidence to meet you here," that kind man would comment. "Who are you?" Somewhat confused. "My name is Joseph Engelberger, or also known as the father of robotics," he would respond animatedly. "And I see that you are carrying one of my books, right?" pointing Eri's hand. "Oh, Mr. Joseph, It's a pleasure to meet you. I was really hoping to meet you one day to ask for your help. Surprised to see such a genius man in front of her. Postponed. It's my big dream to help everyone who needs help with robotics, and I see that you're part of it while observing his body made of metal. It would be a great favor, Mr. Joseph Engelberger. Excited. The young woman was very excited to see that she could finally get better, not knowing that by doing so, all the memories she had forced herself to forget would come flooding back to her, and all that suffering would lead her to make many bad decisions.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.